The rain had just stopped when Ava rolled her wheelchair toward the cafe door, her heart pounding with hope and nerves. She had spent hours choosing her dress, a soft lavender one that matched her eyes, and fixing her hair in gentle curls that framed her face. Today was special. Today, after years of loneliness, she was finally meeting someone who had promised to see beyond the chair. But as the clock ticked past the hour, her coffee grew cold, and the seat across from her remained heartbreakingly empty. Each minute chipped away at her fragile excitement, until only silence and disappointment sat beside her. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the beauty of humanity even in its most broken moments, please take a second to like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Your support helps us spread real stories that touch the heart. Ava's reflection in the cafe window looked tired. The rain streaks on the glass blurred her face, as if even the world couldn't bear to see her pain clearly. She had been paralyzed from the waist down for 6 years, ever since a drunk driver ran a red light and changed her life forever. Once, she'd been a dancer, graceful, vibrant, full of life. But now every move depended on wheels, patience, and courage. She'd rebuilt herself slowly, learning to smile through the ache, learning to live when dreams felt out of reach. But today she just wanted to feel seen. Her phone buzzed, a message. She grabbed it with trembling hands. It was from Ryan, the man she'd been chatting with online for months. His words were short. "Sorry, I don't think I can do this. I didn't know you were like that." The world around her fell away. Her heart thudded painfully, and she felt her throat tighten as tears blurred the screen. The same story, all over again. People liked her laughter online, her thoughts, her heart, until they saw the chair, until they realized she wasn't the kind of woman they imagined walking beside them. She was the woman they pitied, avoided, or left behind. She tried to steady her breathing. The cafe was full of quiet chatter and clinking cups, but she felt invisible, a ghost among the living. The waiter, sensing her distress, approached gently and offered to pack her untouched pastry. She smiled weakly and shook her head. "It's okay," she whispered, even though nothing felt okay. As she stared down at her lap, her eyes caught a small pair of pink sneakers stopping in front of her table. A soft, curious voice followed. "Why are you sad, lady?" Ava looked up to see a little girl, maybe 6 years old, with bright eyes and pigtails. Behind her stood a tall man in a navy suit, holding a takeaway coffee and looking slightly embarrassed. He was probably in his late 30s, with dark hair slicked back, and a face that carried both confidence and quiet exhaustion, the kind you only see in people who carry too much responsibility. "I'm sorry," the man said quickly, giving his daughter an apologetic look. "Emma, sweetheart, don't bother the lady." But Ava smiled faintly, blinking away her tears. "It's okay," she said softly. "She's not bothering me." The man hesitated. "We'll leave you to your peace," he said politely, but the little girl tugged his hand. "Daddy, she looks lonely. Can we sit here?" Ava's chest tightened. The man, the CEO, as she'd later learn, seemed torn between manners and his daughter's innocent persistence. Finally, with a small sigh and a kind smile, he nodded. "If the lady doesn't mind." "I don't," Ava whispered, and just like that, 2 strangers sat across from her where the man who had abandoned her was supposed to be. The little girl grinned and took a bite of her cookie, swinging her legs under the chair. "I like your chair," she said brightly. "It's shiny. My dad says people who ride wheels are super strong." Ava chuckled, surprised by the warmth that filled her chest. "Your dad sounds very smart, she." The man smiled, eyes softening. "Sometimes," he murmured. "I'm Ethan, by the way. This curious creature is Emma." "Ava," she said. "It's nice to meet you both." What began as an awkward encounter slowly turned into something unexpected, a conversation that felt human. Ethan asked her about the book she was reading, and she told him about her love for art and how she painted for therapy. He listened, truly listened, not with pity, but with interest. Emma showed Ava the drawings she'd made on napkins, and Ava praised every stick figure like it was a masterpiece. Hours passed without her realizing it. The cafe staff had changed shifts, the sunlight had shifted through the glass, and the world outside had moved on. But inside, Ava found herself laughing again. It was the first real laughter in months. At one point, Ethan excused himself to take a call, leaving Emma with Ava. The little girl leaned closer and whispered, "My mommy went to heaven. Daddy's always sad, but he smiles when you talk. Ava's heart broke a little more and healed at the same time. She looked toward Ethan, standing by the window, his expression distant and thoughtful as he spoke softly into his phone. Grief recognized grief, even if it wore different faces. When he returned, she didn't ask about his loss, and he didn't ask about her accident. They didn't need to. Some wounds were better understood in silence. As they prepared to leave, Emma suddenly ran back to Ava and hugged her tightly around the waist. "You should come to the park with us next time," she said with the kind of innocent certainty that only children have. Ethan started to apologize, but Ava smiled through the lump in her throat. "Maybe I will." That night, Ava sat by her window, the city lights flickering below, her heart strangely full. She thought about Ethan's calm voice, Emma's laughter, the way they hadn't treated her like someone broken. Maybe fate had closed one door only to open another she hadn't imagined. Days passed. Then, one afternoon, Ava received an unexpected message on her social media. A simple note from Ethan. "Emma won't stop asking when she'll see you again. How about that park?" Her fingers trembled as she typed back, "I'd love that." When she arrived at the park, Emma came running across the grass, waving excitedly. Ethan followed behind, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You're right on time," he said warmly. "I thought maybe you'd change your mind." "I almost did," she admitted honestly. "But then I remembered a little girl promised me laughter." They spent the afternoon talking as Emma played nearby. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and childhood joy. For the first time in years, Ava felt sunlight on her face, not as something distant, but as something that truly reached her. Ethan shared bits of his story, how he lost his wife to cancer, how he buried himself in work as the CEO of a growing tech firm, and how Emma's smile kept him grounded. Ava shared hers, the accident, the loneliness, the slow, painful journey to finding herself again. As the weeks turned into months, their meetings became frequent. Always simple, always real. Sometimes they met at that same cafe where it all began. Sometimes in the park, where Emma would draw pictures of Miss Ava and Daddy smiling. One evening, Ethan invited her to an art exhibition he was sponsoring. Nervous but hopeful, Ava accepted. The gallery was elegant and softly lit. She felt out of place among the tall heels and fine suits until she saw him waiting at the entrance, looking at her like she belonged there more than anyone else. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, and something in her heart stirred. That night, as people admired her paintings. Yes, her paintings, which Ethan had secretly arranged to be featured. Ava realized how far she had come. The same woman who once thought her life had ended now stood surrounded by art born from her pain and courage. After the event, they sat outside under the starlight, the city humming softly around them. Ethan looked at her for a long moment before saying, "You know, I thought I was saving you that day at the cafe, but I think you saved me instead." Ava smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "Maybe we saved each other. Time has a way of healing the unseen." Over the following year, their bond grew stronger, built on honesty, laughter, and the quiet strength of 2 people who had already seen life at its worst and still chose hope. One spring afternoon, Ethan brought her back to that same cafe, the place where she'd once been left behind. Only this time, the chair across from her wasn't empty. It held the man who had become her best friend, and beside him sat the little girl who had first asked, "Why are you sad, lady?" As they sipped coffee together, the waiter who had once pitied Ava now smiled in recognition, but this time, his eyes held admiration. When they stepped outside, Ethan knelt beside her chair, his eyes steady and warm. "Ava," he said softly, "you've taught me that strength isn't walking through life. It's choosing to love again, even after everything. Will you let me walk or roll beside you every day?" Ava couldn't speak for a long moment. Her tears spilled freely, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that life had brought her back full circle. From rejection to belonging, from emptiness to love. She nodded through her tears, her voice breaking into a smile. "Yes, Ethan, 1,000 times yes." Emma squealed with joy, hugging Ava as the world around them seemed to shimmer with light. The cafe sign glowed softly behind them, and the sky opened in a golden pink hue of sunset, not as a symbol of endings, but of beginnings reborn. And for the first time in a long, long while, Ava didn't feel broken. She felt whole.